matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what
Boom, we
you
are
can do for your
recording.
country.
Taylor, happy whatever day it is that this is going out. How are you?
Good, how are you? Who cares what day it is?
Who cares? The
I
days
don't
don't
care.
matter. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm a little tired. I was just telling Taylor how I've been running back and forth between Dallas and Austin, and it's been eventful a couple of days. It'll be an eventful February, but yeah, that's life right now.
Cool. Sounds good. Same. I'm a little tired, I think. Just we were at a Super Bowl party most of the day yesterday. It was super fun.
Well, go ahead and introduce us. We'll talk about the Super Bowl.
Hello. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We're the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters, epic failures twice a week. And I'm Taylor, joined by Fars.
Okay, so when I heard that Kendrick Lamar was performing, I was like, man, it's got to be rough being Drake these days.
Yeah.
And then you hear everybody singing the A minor part, like the entire stadium. You're like, oh, poor guy.
Everyone that I was with.
Yeah, everybody that you're
everyone.
with, everybody that was there. And I was like, okay, well, it's a US thing. Who cares? Like, he's a Canadian. Like, it can't be that big of a deal for him. And then like 10 minutes later, they pan to like Germany, Sao Paulo, like every country out there, and they're
Oh
all
my God.
watching the Super Bowl. I was like, oh, poor Drake.
Oh no, everyone's watching. I watched the Super Bowl in 2002 when I studied abroad in Italy. We watched it at a bar at like 2 in the morning. It was super fun.
That is very fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, hopefully you had a good party.
Yeah. It was fun. We were with people who were definitely Eagles fans, which was great.
Oof.
And they invited a ton of people, but not a lot of people came, so there was just like so much food and it was fun. We had a good time.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Eagles fans. I don't know what it is about them, but man, they're rough. They're like the old
It's
Raiders
because they're
fans.
they're from Philadelphia.
Yeah. That's yeah. There's something in the water there.
There is. I wouldn't like argue with a Philadelphia sports fan.
No, that's a waste of time.
No. And safety concerns.
Yeah. They
Nah.
might take it a little too personal.
Yeah.
Cool. So you want wait? We already did introduce us. Sorry. Who is going first today?
I think I am.
Sweet. Then the floor is yours.
All right. I'm ready. So, yeah, I am preparing for Women's History Month, and I'm like have my list. I'm so dumb. At my list, I was like, oh, I have four women that I want to do for Women's History Month in March. And I looked at my list, and there's four things on it. But the first word is just women.
Are you just gonna cover the species of female
No,
humans?
I'm gonna find a fourth one. I'm sure there's plenty. But I was
Okay.
just like, ugh, what's wrong with me? So for the rest of February, 1, 2, 3, I wanted to do some medieval stories because I have one that I want to end February with. And then I got kind of caught up in some other ones. So I read a book for this episode. I'm going to tell you about it. So I went back to medieval times, and the book I read was called Summer of Blood,
Bathory.
England's First
Bathory.
Revolution. What?
Damn it! Is it? Oh, it's not Bathory.
What?
Elizabeth Bathory, the
No,
woman who bathed in virgin blood.
no. I'm
Damn.
like, what
Okay.
word are you yelling at me?
Should have. Because I forgot if it's Elizabeth or something else, but I'm pretty sure it's Elizabeth Bathory.
It is, but that's in Hungary,
Okay, I'll stop
and
yelling.
it's like 200 years later.
Got it. I stand corrected. I
So,
apologize.
can I finish telling you the title of this book? Because I think maybe if you would get it.
Okay.
Summer of Blood, England's First Revolution. England, we're in England. Anyway, this is the Peasants Revolt of
Okay.
1391. So, 1381. It's 1381. So, I still can't spell medieval. I tried the trick, can't do it. Don't care. But there are some like this is still a point if you want to like think about what people looked like during this time is it's like the images that we have of medieval life are like very flat, two-dimensional images that are like on a tapestry. You know what I mean? Can you picture that?
I
You can
can.
picture like flat horses, flat people, and like flags that are like a rectangle with a triangle cut out on like a pole.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking about. We're at the very, very end of the medieval times, which is Middle Ages, Dark Ages. We don't say that anymore, but you know what I mean, which was from about 465 to 1400. So we're at the very end and we're about to flip over into the Renaissance. And of course, you don't know that you are living in the end of an era until much later. You know, like they didn't know they were living at the end of the medieval times and about to go into the Renaissance. They were just living. Um, Sometimes I think you can tell if you like watch the news, but for the most part, you don't know if you're in the end of an era.
Right.
Um, so people didn't really expect this, but big things are coming. Big things are changing. So we're in England, and it's the Peasants Revolt of 1381. So leading up to this revolt is a whole bunch of stuff that is makes the life in England very tense. And I know that we talk about it all the time, but like it was just really fucking hard to be alive for most of the time.
Yeah.
And the medieval times are no exception. So most people are serfs, where someone else owns the land. They're like a local lord, and you work it. And sometimes you could potentially work your way to owning your own land, but usually no. And part of your responsibility is to farm the land and disperse the food to the lord and the rich people. And you kind of can never get out of that. That's your job. So most people have that job, which is not great. And then right before this, the plague happens. So the Black Death starts in 1348 and kills 50% of the population in England, which is insane.
So crazy.
So
But to be
COVID
fair
killed,
though, what like people were sicklier there then anyways. So like
but I don't think, I mean, they certainly didn't have any chance of like not getting it, you know?
yeah, that's
Like,
true.
so like now, so I looked up COVID. COVID killed less than 1% of Americans. And I know people who, I don't know anyone personally who died from COVID, but I know people whose like parents died, you know? Um, but just imagine half the people you know are dead.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
everyone else has like probably gotten it. So they're like pockmarked from the boils or whatever. And yeah, I mean, they didn't even know how it happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they didn't know how it transmitted.
Yeah. So that half the people are dead. So what happens after that is half of the people that aren't dead are like, my labor is now worth more than it was before because there are less of us.
Yep.
So they would do things like shopping around for jobs, so they can, get a couple more logs and be a little less dirty and things like that. And the lords are like, we don't want that. Like that can't happen. Like you can't do that. But they were like, but now we see that you need us more than we need you. You know, you need someone to do this. Remember Monty Python when the king is like, I'm the one not covered in shit.
Yes. Yes.
So it's like that. Like it's terrible for everyone else. And another thing that happened, I don't really think, I'm not going to talk about it much after this, but the priests also died because they're humans and humans die. But people were confused about that because they're like, why would the priest die if they asked God not to kill them? You know? So it put a little bit of distrust in the church because they're like, if this thing is even killing the priests, then something is like very wrong,
The
you know?
Pope didn't die though. The Pope didn't die because he stayed like in a sealed room,
Sure.
basically.
But like your local priest probably died,
Right.
you know? All the guys up in the monastery, they died. So the lords were like, okay, hold on. If I see this, so if I pay you more money, I'm gonna make less money. So like you see how I can't do that, you know? That's what they're saying.
Got it.
And so they passed a law in 1351 called the Statute of Laborers, where they couldn't pay anyone more than they paid them pre-plague. Like you couldn't ask for more and you couldn't pay anybody more than they were paid pre-plague.
That's a good way to do it. Make it
Yeah.
legislate it.
So they were like, I can't pay more than I did before. Like, you get it. Like
It's a
I
crime if I pay you
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, like I have to pay you this much money. Like this is just the way it's always been. But some people were like, no, I don't like that. So they just left. Like they would leave, they would go get jobs in cities. Similarly, not like they weren't working from home, but they were like, you know, in cities making more money. Their buying power of the average serf went up 40%. So they started making a lot more money. And then they were like, hey, I have another idea. Now that I have more money, why don't I buy nicer things? Instead of wearing this sack, I'm going to buy a dress. I'm going to buy a hat. And that really pissed people off. They were like, how will we know you used to be poor if you dress nice?
It's,
You know?
it's actually a valid criticism.
But I mean, like they're like, we need to know that you used to be poor. Like we can't be mistaking you for one of us, you know?
Yeah.
So they made laws in 1363 to stop them from buying nice things. So you really couldn't get ahead.
Yeah, they couldn't wear fabrics that were
Yeah.
like a certain color or
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
bunch
Yeah.
of nonsense.
Yeah. So all this is happening in the background, and then also we're in the middle of the Hundred Years' War that was actually 116 years long, which we know is again France and England, just like those two need to calm down because they're always
Actually,
fighting each other.
actually, I kind of take back what I just said about it being stupid, not letting people wear expensive clothes, because now we have Klarna and we have people who make like $15,000 a year buying Louis Vuitton stuff, and it's like
Are they
that's
still
not.
doing that? I feel like that's not in fashion.
I
I
don't
haven't
have
seen
a Louis
anyone
Vuitton purse.
with a Louis Vuitton
Also,
anything in like 20 years.
you live in Joshua Tree, so I don't think you're gonna see a lot of that there.
I said
But
20 years. I lived in LA and New York City since then, and I haven't seen hardly any.
I think fashion comes around every now and then. But I do think that you can buy stuff on like credit, like the weekly credit.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
is so beyond me at this point. But yeah, don't do
But
that.
you can still have nice things. You know what I mean? Like just because like sometimes if you see a person who you think shouldn't be able to afford an iPhone and they have an iPhone, like maybe they saved up for it. Maybe someone bought it for them. Maybe it was like their, something important that they got from someone else. Like it's not,
I think
you can still
Klarna and Affirm's market cap's like 20 billion a
you can
piece.
still have nice things. Like you don't have to like be dirt poor. You can save up and have one nice thing. But
Yes,
they're saying you can't have any nice things. Like
right.
absolutely not no nice things. And then it's a Hundred Years' War, and France and England are fighting again. William the Conqueror was like just there, taking over. Now they're like back and forth. And I wrote, if we go to 23andMe, like, all these people are just the same. Um, but one of the last times that Britain attacked France was in 1940 during World War II, when
Seriously?
they were like bombing some of their boats and France was pissed, but they were like, well, how can we trust you when the Nazis have taken over France? So
Wow.
they haven't even had peace for 100 years, those two. Hopefully they can figure it out, but like enough.
Always
If
have
you're
it.
listening, England and France, no, stop it. It better be over.
They are.
Um, in war, as we know, is expensive in men and in money. And England is running out of money. So they have a poll tax, and it starts out as 4 pence per person over 14, which is a lot of money. And it's also they get a discount if you have a married couple, but like single women were like, I don't want to pay just because I didn't get married.
Right.
And some people are like, just people obviously don't want to do it. They don't make that much money. The government doesn't raise that much money. They try to do it again on like a sliding scale to say like, um, you know, based on how much money you earn, but it still doesn't raise enough money to fund the war, and people are mad about it. So all that's happening. It's the plague just ended. People want to be paid more. It's 100 years war. There's a lot of like class things happening, and our king is 10 years old. His name is Richard II. And I want to pause to talk about a thing that I learned on Instagram called the Tiffany effect. Have you heard of this?
No.
And I feel like we've mentioned this before. So the Tiffany effect is essentially that you assume the name Tiffany is modern, but it isn't. It's from like the medieval period, at least. But you couldn't put the name Tiffany into a movie about the Middle Ages. You'd be like, that's super weird.
True.
So I'm the same as with the name Jessica. So those are like names that are like hundreds of years old, but they feel newer. So I just like Richard, somebody could be named Richard today, and I don't think that's weird, that is a name from, but also in the past, but like Tiffany is a name that you can't do that with. And it also reminded me, remember when we talked about Cyrus the Great and Darius?
Yeah.
And I was like, that name just seems so normal. And then there's a guy in the Eagles named Darius Slay, and I'm like, that name feels so normal, but it's like it feels so modern, but it is an ancient name.
I think it's Daryush. It's a
You
Persian name.
literally told me it was Darius when I was calling it something else during our Cyrus the Great episode.
Yeah, well, I changed my mind.
God damn it. But another thing that is fun for the Tiffany effect is the word goth is obviously from the Gothic architectural style, but it was kind of a derogatory term during the Renaissance to describe medieval architecture because they didn't like it, which I think is funny.
Interesting.
Um, Also in this story, I felt like this is like I just wanted to talk about these names. There's a lot of towns that are like Brentwood and Scarborough and Rochester, which is fun because they're just words that you hear all over the world, not just
I
in
think we
England.
named most of our towns after
We
English
did, and like I get it when I hear like New York, but when I hear like Rochester, that's always funny to me. It'll always be funny.
or Paris,
You know,
Texas.
like the ancient city of Syracuse, like that always makes me laugh. Um, so anyway, that's our king, Richard. He is 10. His grandfather was Edward III. He was the one who started the Hundred Years' War. He was like, you know what? I want France back. And he passed away. And also, Richard's dad was named Edward the Black Prince. I don't really know what he did, but that's also kind of a cool name. They both died. And so Richard is the king. He's 10 years old. So obviously, he has people who are telling him what to do. One of them is his uncle, John of Gaunt. So John is his uncle, one of his many regents, but there's people telling him what to do. So there's tension. And as you expect, when you get to a Renaissance, which obviously they don't know they're doing, but things are happening like when people have more money, they have more time to do things like educate themselves. So people are learning to read and wanting to govern themselves. And they want to do things like create their own communities rather than have a community that's like just a bunch of poor people around a lord. They were like, we could do this better if we worked together. And the lords are like, not excited about that. They actually go back and they read the Doomsday Book, which I talked about in the Battle of Hastings episode, because in 1066, after William the Conqueror came to England, he essentially did a census of all of England to figure out how many taxes he was going to get from people. And he has this book that was written in 1086 that lists all the people. So here we are 200 years later or 300 years later, and people are like, well, wait a minute. Like my great 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 grandfather owned a lot of land. What happened? Like that should be mine. Like the lords were like taking over all the little pieces of land or whatever, and they were like trying to use that to be like, we should have our land back. And obviously that didn't work in court, but people were like thinking like, I deserve better than this, you know?
Hey, so is it fair to say the Renaissance could only happen because of what you said, people having time so they could actually like paint or
I
read or learn how to do things?
I think a lot of it is that like that like rich people probably were always like doing art, but there's a space for everyone to have that opportunity or more people to have that opportunity. I also feel like there's something else that I don't have any sources for, but there's something to me about in the Renaissance they started to invent eyeglasses, and I feel like that would change the world, you
Dude, I
know?
just learned about that. So,
Yeah.
it was called a reading stone or something. So I don't think it was invented during the Renaissance. I think it was a little bit after. I think it was like the 1600s. I think I actually don't know when the Renaissance is. The 1600s.
No, the Renaissance started in around 1400, but glasses were invented between 1268 and 1300.
The ones that actually sit on your face, the ones that you have to like press against a
The ones
piece
set
of
in your face.
paper. Oh wow, okay, all right. I stand corrected.
But But yeah, can you imagine? Most of humanity you didn't have that. So if your eyes were bad, like I don't know, my husband's worn glasses for his whole entire life. He would be fucked. What do you
Yeah,
do? You
yeah.
know? So I don't know, pretty incredible. I think that's a part of it too. Is like you can read now because you can see the words in a lot of
It's always
cases.
helpful.
Yeah. So it's the summer of 1381, and we are in Essex, which is a town in England. And a man named John Bampton comes into town to collect taxes. And they're like, nope, we already paid them. And he's like, no, you didn't. They're like, yes, we did. I don't think they did. They were like, we don't want to do this. And John Bampton runs away, but the people that were with him get killed. So the news is spreading that people are resisting paying these taxes and they want to talk to the king. So they start moving towards London. So a lot of people start going towards London just to have like to revolt and riot and be like, we don't want to live like this anymore. I also saw a tweet from yesterday that was someone who was reading the police scanners in Philly, and they were like so funny. They were like, things are on fire. There are fireworks in the street. One of them was like, there's 5,000 people coming your way. I don't know what you should do.
That would have happened if they lost too, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. No, no, no. No matter what. That was all going to happen. But I love that. It's so funny. There's 5,000 people coming your way. Good luck. That's kind of what was happening right now. So there are some leaders. So some of the names of the leaders of the revolt are there's Wat Tyler, W-A-T Tyler, Jack Straw, Thomas Baker, John Ro Ray, W-R-A-W-E, Ray, I'm gonna say Ray, John Ball, William Grindacombe, and then there's a woman named Joanna Furrier, which Ferrour, which is someone who makes horseshoes. So Jack Straw might not be real. He might be like a pseudonym, but there's a couple that we know a little bit about. So John Ball is a priest, and he has been in jail a lot. So because he is speaking out on behalf of the people, and he was kind of like a lyrical speaker. People really liked hearing him. And one thing he said kind of on the subject of freedom is would say, quote, when Adam delved Eve and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? For the beginning, all men by nature were created alike, and our bondage or servitude came in by unjust oppression of naughty men, which I think is
Amen.
fun.
I like that.
Yeah. So he's like, we should, recover liberty, cast off the yoke of bondage, all that kind of stuff.
Which is probably
Um,
radical. Which is probably
yeah,
radical for them.
yeah, that's why he was in jail so much,
Oh, got it.
because people didn't like it. Yeah. I mean, people liked it, but the people in charge didn't like it.
Yeah, right.
So he ends up getting freed by the rebels as they march through town, and he kind of goes with them towards London. There's Joanna, who was a lady, which is exciting. She led groups to storm some buildings in London, and we'll get to those. There's also Wat Tyler. He was the leader, and he had like strong leadership, good strategy, and he led them as they walked towards London. And as they get there, they are attacking on the way, picking up more people, like moving towards London, being like, we're rioting against these taxes, essentially. On the way there, they see the king's mom trying to leave London, and they just kind of like let her go, but they kind of laugh at her and let her go. But by June 10th, they in London, they know that this group of people is coming. Like they know that there's people marching toward the city. So the king moves into the Tower of London for safety. He's 14 right now.
It's gonna be
So
terrifying.
yeah, so he's 14 years old in the Tower of London, surrounded by all these like old men trying to tell him what to do,
Like, I
trying
didn't
to
even
figure.
want this. I didn't even ask for this.
Yeah, yeah. So the king agrees to meet them on the river. And also remember, most of your generals and like strong military leadership, they're in France. They're fighting a war. Like they're not even there to help you. And the rebels are like, hey, you know what? We like the king. We just don't like all these tax collectors. Like we think we could talk to the king about it. So they're coming to have that conversation. And so they say, we're going to meet you on the Thames, we'll meet you on the river, and we'll have this talk. So on June 13th, Richard gets on a boat to the Tower of London and sails up the Thames to meet the group. And the group is on the side that's like not London, the other side of the river, because London, remember, has a wall around it,
Yep.
like a literal wall. And they are excited. So they're like, oh, the king is here. And they're yelling. So imagine you are 14 years old, you are on a boat with people telling you that every one of these peasants wants to kill you. He wants to like get out of their social contract being peasants. And you see a group of like thousands of men who are dirty, screaming with like, I don't know, pitchforks, but they're excited. But he gets scared, which I think is fair.
Yeah, I would get scared too.
Yeah. And goes back to the Tower of London without talking to them. So it's impossible because it was impossible for them to communicate. They're pissed. They're like, the king was here and then he just left. So they start going into London. They walk over the London Bridge, and bridges at this time, like I learned this also when I lived in Italy, like the Ponte Vecchio in Florence. It has stores in it now, but all this time, all the bridges would have like stores on the sides of it. Like there would be like that'd be where you would buy jewelry or you'd buy meat or like whatever. So like the bridge is crowded. It's not just like
It's
a
like an outdoor
bridge.
market, right?
Yeah. So they walk over the London Bridge. They come in all different gates because remember it's a wall, but they come in all around London. They come in the gates and they start burning shit down because they're pissed and they're scared and they want to like don't know what to do. Joanna leads a group to the Savoy Palace, which is the house of John of Gaunt, and they burn it down. They get 10,000 pounds worth of stuff, like money pounds, and they get like gold and all kinds of cool stuff. It says that they burned all the soft furniture, and I hope at least one person got a nap in before that happened
I
because they
do
probably
too.
like never
If
saw a couch before.
hopefully the pillows were saved.
Yeah, I hope like someone was like, I'm going to take this. I've never, what is, I don't know the word for pillow. I've never had one, but like, this seems great to put under my head. Um, at some point, they, in the history books, a man named John Furrier, so Joanna's husband, potentially, saved the life of a young boy named the Earl of Derby. His name was Henry Bolingbroke, and Henry Bolingbroke is the future King of England. So Joanna and John, like they like played a big part in England's history, if that's true. That's like a myth, maybe. So London is now on fire. People are being beheaded and they're carrying heads around on sticks. They're killing a lot of like the bishops and the tax collectors and the people that are in the government. On June 14th, it is early in the day, and the government is all basically hiding in the Tower of London because it makes sense, you'd hide. And they,
No, you solve the problem, and I don't think solving the problem is done by just hiding, but I
well,
guess that's the only option.
at the moment you're hiding, like you don't know what to do. You
They're
can't hide
rioting.
forever,
It's
but
true.
like you're hiding. So they're hiding, and then the rebels agree to meet at Miles End, which is like a little bit outside the Aldgate at like the top of London. I don't know, I couldn't tell which direction my map was when I looked at it, but like it's on the edge of London. They're going to meet out there. So the king goes out um to try to talk to the rebels at Mile End, and then a bunch of people stay in the tower, and then 400 rebels rush the tower, and there's tons of looting and killing. One particular person, the Archbishop of Sudbury, he had his head chopped off, but like it took like 25 times, and at one point they accidentally chopped off his hand, and it was awful,
I
like
have a
you were
question.
saying before.
Do you think that people back then valued their own lives the way we value our own lives?
I
Because it
don't
feels like it's
know.
so cheap to just like die all the time for nothing
Because I
at all,
feel
no
like,
reason at all.
yeah. I mean, like that, obviously, I also feel like you have to be, and I feel like I've learned this in a bunch of history reading that, like, the act of being that close to someone and killing them is something that, like, a lot of us couldn't even imagine, you know? Like,
It
that
just happens so
brutality.
often.
Yeah, but it happened, like, all the time.
Well, that's so we couldn't imagine it because like
Right,
it's not it wasn't a part of our upbringing.
right.
But
But at
these
that
guys
point,
could.
especially if you've already seen, like, most people you know have died of the plague anyway, you know? Like, you're
Yeah,
not,
I think you don't value life. Like, how can you
yeah,
possibly value your own life if it's just
yeah,
so cheap?
yeah. No, totally. I don't know. It's a good question. Um, So they killed that archbishop. The king's mom is there again, and they on Wikipedia when I was like reading through this, they said that they just make fun of his mom and his sister and let them go. And like I don't want that to make you think that they like didn't sexually assault people because they absolutely did. You know,
It's
there's
kind of baked
obviously
in there.
like yeah, there was obviously like looting and sexual assault and killing for fun. It was like a purge night, you know, basically like
Which
do whatever you
like
want.
probably was kind of fun for like some of them.
Yeah,
Like imagine like
exactly.
you're like 40 years old, you've been taxed to death, you have
Yeah,
nothing, your kids have nothing. Yeah, go slaughter some rich people.
yeah. There are heads on London Bridge, like a lot of heads around. You know, it's wild. So London is a mess right now. There's blood in the streets. It's on fire, and now it's June 15th. The king goes to Westminster Abbey to pray that he is gonna, figure this out. He agrees to meet Wat Tyler, who's our leader, on a hill, and something happens that we're not 100% clear on. So at first, Tyler, who he's like super excited. He's like, "Hey, brother, let's be friends. Like, I know you don't want your subjects to have a terrible life. I know we can work with you and we can work something out." And the first thing he asks for is like, "Let's just stop doing the poll tax. That's it. Let's just stop that." And then will be happy. And then he goes a step further and says that he wants all of serfdom to be abolished. And then he starts to kind of get, I don't know, excited and asking for more things. And something happens in the book that I read. They said that he like drinks water and spits it out, which is like really disrespectful to the king or something. Something happens where the Lord Mayor of London, William Walworth, stabs Tyler in the neck and then stabs him again in the head. And then he runs away. And Tyler turns around. He gets on his horse and turns around and starts to ride back, but he falls off, and everybody's confused because they're like, he was coming back, but then he fell and like he's dead, and what happened? And then the king's people take his body. They put it on a pole, put the head on the pole, and now things are a mess because the rebel leader is dead, and no one knows what to do because they don't have any leadership anymore. Um, Meanwhile, there are other things happening in other places around England. So it's not just London, it's happening in smaller places as well. But that the things start to kind of fall apart for the rebels after Tyler dies. And this is when the suppression starts. So the king gets together. He wants every man under 60 in London to get together, which is like kind of hard because a lot of the men are away at war, but he gets 4,000 men to come and start pushing them out of London. And the leaders of the revolt are starting to get rounded up to get executed. We think that Joanna was okay, that she didn't get executed, but the men pretty much all did. Tyler and John Raw, their bodies were hanged, drawn, and quartered, and then each quarter of their body was taken to the four corners of the realm, which is what a job that
This is
is.
rough.
Like, hey, Forrest, could you take this guy's top right half just as far northeast as you can go? That'd be
No,
great.
you don't
Thanks.
tell him what it is, do you?
Yes.
I guess.
I mean, I feel like you'd probably be like, I'm honored, my king.
Just be like, it's a ham sandwich. Just go.
But then you'd open it and be like, oh no, it was not a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
didn't buy lunch. I thought I had a ham sandwich,
That's
you
a good
know?
point.
Um, After that, they did not do a poll tax again. They were able, they at the end of 1381, they decided to reduce the military effort. The war went on, but they didn't collect money for it in that way. They also, serfdom itself did decline, but it took about 200 years. So in about 200 years, it'll be totally gone. And it's kind of because the economy and people, wanted to make obviously more money. There was more like opportunities for leasing and things like that. Like it wasn't great, but it was like a little bit better. So it did start to get a little bit better. Um, so serfdom would eventually, not be there anymore. Um, our King Richard would not live very long. He was 14 when this happens, and within a year, he's going to get married to a woman named Anne of Bohemia, and she was called like Good Queen Anne. People really really liked her. She would ask for leniency for some of the people who were on trial after the revolt. She died of the plague in 1394, so the plague is also still around, and they had no children. He then married Isabella of Valois, and she was literally a child. She was 6 when they got married. And she brought dolls. They did not consummate the marriage. They were just friends. And he would die before her, before she turned, I think 12 was their age of consent, which, obviously not great, but um, he would die before her. She would end up marrying someone else. She married her cousin and died in childbirth when she was 19. So poor thing.
What a
She did
rough
not.
life.
What a poor thing. Richard ended up kind of in the middle of his marriages. He fought with the Lords Appellate, which is like the men in charge, and he kind of went in and out of power. He did believe that like the king was appointed by God, and he would commission a lot of art and architecture while he was king. In 1399, he banished his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, who was the son of John of Gaunt, who you'll remember was saved in the Tower of London, probably by John Ferrier, who was the husband of Joanna, who's one of our leaders. And Henry came back to England, banished Richard, whatever, back and forth, and Henry's became Henry the Fourth, and his people murdered him. They murdered Richard II when he was 33. He probably starved to death in jail.
It's such a horrible time.
I know.
Everything was just so bad.
Yeah, Everything was terrible. So that is the story of the Peasants Revolt. And then next week, I'm going to tie this story into fairy tales again because guess who was there the entire time?
Uh, well, it wasn't Brothers Grimm.
No,
Mary Shelley. No, that's
no.
way. Who?
Uh, Chaucer and his
Ah,
Canterbury Tales.
got it. Got it.
He was in London during the Peasants Revolt. So I'm going to learn about him and talk about him next week.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
several things. One, I was gonna text you earlier because I went down this rabbit hole earlier about about Leonardo da Vinci. I was
Hmm.
about to say DiCaprio, the other
It's
Leonardo,
fine.
um, and was just like because I know that you've seen all these things, and like I was thinking about the Renaissance. It was really weird that you brought this up when you did because I was literally just dwelling on this stuff, and how it seemed like he was part of like the spark of the Renaissance, like he's like a case study of the Renaissance.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyways,
That's it.
um,
No, he is. Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci is the Renaissance.
I also was thinking that I think we're on the precipice of the next Renaissance with AI.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's fair.
like, I was
Well, I think we're.
thinking,
I don't know if it's. I don't know if the Renaissance is like exactly right, but I do think we're on the end of something, the beginning of something else.
yeah, yeah, not Renaissance. Yeah, you're right.
You know
It's
what I mean?
era.
It could
Era is
be.
the
Yeah.
change of because like I was listening to this podcast. I forgot who it was about how when tech was becoming like a big thing,
Hmm.
it was all about like businesses catering to the employees and like mostly engineers.
Hmm.
Like food and huge pay and huge equity, whatever, and all that.
Yeah.
And with AI, it's almost like a manifestation of like the rage they felt of like how much they had to bend over backwards for the employees, and
Hmm.
that yeah, who knows what that means for everyone. Like
Yeah.
it's probably not going to be good, but also, I mean, we've known a lot of engineers who take a lot of advantage of the fact that they're engineers, and I'm not
Yeah.
terribly sad about it. I'm kind of happy about it, to be honest.
Um. No, I know someone that we worked with one time was like, "Can't wait till these fucking engineers be like or stop being so like in demand."
I know. You remember? I mean, there was one that was close in my life. Anyways, I'm not going to go into it. Um,
Yeah, totally. So yeah,
Sweet.
done.
Well, thank you for
Oh,
sharing.
you're welcome.
And so it sounds like you're going to be weaving these stories together then.
Yes, and then I have one more medieval story for the end of February, I think.
Very,
That should
very
be fun.
fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
excited.
Um, Thank you for sharing. Anything you want to sign off with?
Yeah, we have a bunch of interactions on our TikToks, which is super fun. Some people were like, "I found you on TikTok and I've been listening." So thank you for doing that. That is so awesome. And we also had a couple of people who, you know, how we had talked about with our John Wilkes Booth, like what a good metaphor would be, like who famous person, and a good one would be like if Travis Kelce did it. Like, not that he would, but like he's like a famous brother and he's like handsome, which I was like, that's a good one.
Do
He's
a lot of
super
people know
famous.
what he looks like?
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
Now I just picture him sad, but yeah,
He was pretty sad yesterday.
I like his beard. Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was fun. And then a lot of people were commenting on, I'm talking about our older episodes as well, and the Andrea Yates episode. And a lot of people are talking about how her husband was told not to keep impregnating her because she was severely depressed and he kept doing it,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
we talked about it.
Yeah. So they're like a lot of, talking about how he's definitely to blame.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. He left his children alone with her. They knew she was mentally ill.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you don't do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. So, yeah, but thank you. I love talking to people on TikTok. It's super fun. I feel like, I don't know, it's fun. I like it. I appreciate
Taylor,
everybody who's following us.
you are so much hipper than I am. I never got on the. I'll tell you this much. Every now and then, I see, not every now and then, always, I see the clips that you make, and
Oh, thank you.
I'm always like, how did she do that? Like, how do you make your image appear? And then there's a
It
background
is.
behind you, and then there's like music playing, but then you can hear like it's so
Okay.
multi-layered, and like I don't know. Good for you for knowing tech still.
Thank you. No, that is all I know how to do is the one green screen. Like some people, some like history accounts have like hundreds of thousands of followers and they like they must I don't know, they must write a script and rehearse and then like do the images when I can't do that. But I can do one image and I can talk. So that's what I've been doing.
If you are interested in
not gonna
being
like
our graphic
hold them over
designer
my face.
intern, please write to us at doomsdayfallpod@gmail.com.
TikTok intern. Yeah. But no, but hey, I'm doing it in my ripe old age. Every time I post, we get more followers. So, we don't have a ton,
Yeah.
but we have some. It's cool.
No, it's awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that. Cool. Anything else?
That is it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh yeah,
Alrighty.
Doomed to Fail Pod on all the social medias. Find us there.
At doomsdayfallpod on social media, doomsdayfallpod at gmail.com, all things. Sweet. We'll go ahead and cut off and rejoin y'all later on this week. Thanks, Taylor.